13 years after the event, the 1994 genocide in Rwanda remains a major factor in the country's public life. About 200 delegates from parliaments in Africa, the Caribbean, the Pacific and the European Union have been invited to this Gacaca trial near Kigali airport. Gacaca is a community justice system that Rwanda set up to deal with those who engaged in the killings. It's a remarkable system, especially given that it doesn't involve lawyers. The system involves the entire village, and everybody is given a chance to speak. Gacaca justice is one example of how Rwanda, with its limited resources, is coping with the aftermath of the genocide. Irish MEP Gay Mitchell is impressed with what he's seen.
Well, it's quite extraordinary to stand here and to imagine the sort of violence that took place here such a short time ago, when about 1 million people were killed in a population of less than 9 million people. That sort of violence is hard to contemplate, and yet we have a people that are trying to reconcile themselves with that fact and are aiming to mediate that difficulty.
This year, Rwanda is guest host of the 14th Parliamentary Assembly of the ACP EU countries. The Assembly includes 78 official representatives of the ACP countries and 78 from the European Union. It includes 29 MEPs from the EPP-ED group.
36 years ago, a partnership was built by the countries that were part of the ex-colonies of the European Union countries to bring them together to create a partnership, a genuine partnership, where development issues and co-development could take place. As the EU grew, the hope was that the former colonies would grow with them and they become prosperous. That hasn't happened.
We have problems together, we have a relationship, and with the new joint EU-Africa strategy, we like to outline a strategy to cooperate together, and that's for the first time in history. We have a joint strategy to combat poverty in Africa and to develop African countries.
Solving these problems means it's necessary to reach new agreements on issues like trade and healthcare. British MEP John Boas is rapporteur on an ACP EU report on neglected diseases. Most people are aware of the need to combat HIV, AIDS and malaria, but it's difficult for developing nations to properly address diseases that are not widespread, like diabetes or epilepsy. Boas proposes to make more funds available to treat these diseases and to make it easier for poor people to buy these drugs. The Boas report was adopted with strong support from ACP countries.
The ACP countries were positive. They understand. They live with these diseases. The European countries were positive. In some cases they admit they're learning about these diseases. They can see how they can make a difference. But if you're living on the ground, you know exactly what it means to live with epilepsy or to live with schistosomiasis. And you know you need help, and you know at the moment nobody's helping you.
While it was easy to get support for the healthcare report, it was a challenge to get the ACP to throw their weight behind a statement on China's role in foreign direct investment. China has become a major buyer of resources in Africa and does only very little in return. MEP Astrid Lulling regrets that the ACP countries did not acknowledge China's increasing significance.
In Africa we have a saying that goes, when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. If the EU has issues to pick up with China, it is our view that the ACP-EU forum is not the right place to do it.
Il y a beaucoup de spécialistes qui rendent attentifs à ces dangers, qui même qualifient la politique de la Chine en Afrique de néocolonialisme. Moi, je n'ai pas dit ça, mais au fait, les experts dans ce domaine le disent, et la Commission européenne a fait une étude et elle dit clairement que ce que fait la Chine en Afrique maintenant fait plus de dommages que de bien et ne réduit pas la pauvreté des gens.
The Kigali meeting also was another opportunity to meet members of political groups in Africa that share the same values as the EPP-ED group. This is known as the Windhoek Dialogue, an initiative which began in 1996. The idea behind this Windhoek Dialogue is to develop a network for cooperation not just between the European People's Party and European Democrats group and its African partners, but also among the African parties themselves.
It is, of course, in Africa it's a bit different than in Europe. The structures of parties are not comparable. Many are still ethnic oriented, others are not, but we would like to promote the principles that we share in Europe, also for Africa, because I think they are global principles. Development can only take place in a framework of good governance, of democracy, of peace.
I see it as a very important dialogue which brings together many African, especially the African political parties in different countries.
Pour nous, c'était vraiment une occasion d'avoir un cadre d'échange avec le groupe des démocrates chrétiens et également établir un partenariat dans le cadre du bien-être de nos pays et particulièrement le renforcement des capacités de nos membres au sein de nos partis politiques.
It should take us, I think, to certain levels where you know, the communication and the ability for, particularly for the developing countries, to develop according to a pace that is compatible to themselves and I suppose to the projects that are being promoted.
Headlines at the ACP EU meeting are made in the talks on preferential treatment of the former colonies of EU member states. For the last 7 years, ACP countries enjoyed a special status. That situation ends in 2008. The EPP-ED group has argued in favour of a new system that includes economic partnership agreements, which are open to all developing countries, not just the ACP states. These EPAs allow preferential treatment in line with WTO rules.
We try to promote the understanding amongst our African and Caribbean and Pacific partners that we have to find a WTO-compatible new framework, because there are other developing countries. What shall I tell Bangladesh? That they don't have preferential access to our markets, and they still, of course, they desperately need it also. So the issue of equal treatment of developing countries with us, that is an issue.
The declaration agreed in Kigali opens the door for EPAs, but not immediately. The European Commission, just as the EPP-ED group, notes that ACP countries remain reluctant to give up their special status. EPAs will remain a prominent feature of international trade talks in the coming months. But with the Kigali Declaration on the table, the creation of a level playing field among developing nations in world trade has come a small step closer.